An independent tribunal in London heard testimonies from Uyghur Muslims alleging torture, forced sterilisation and rape. Researchers estimate at least 1 million Uyghurs have been confined in re-education camps in Xinjiang. Here's NTD's Jane Well with the story.
An independent tribunal that's examining allegations of human rights abuses against Uyghurs in Xinjiang has begun its first set of hearings. The tribunal aims to assess if Beijing is committing genocide. Witnesses gave testimonies of torture, forced sterilisation and rape. It's chaired by the prominent human rights barrister Sir Geoffrey Nice QC, who has previously led the prosecution of Slobodan Milosevic.
We will not be affected by what may simply be present turns of mind. We will only make decisions on the evidence.
The panel of 8 is made up of lawyers, academics and a former British diplomat. On the tribunal's opening day, the first witness, speaking through an interpreter, described being forcibly sterilised in a Chinese state hospital and sexually assaulted by a Chinese minder sent to her home.
I am woman myself, I have daughter. I don't wish anyone to suffer like that.
The tribunal doesn't have the backing of the UK government and doesn't have powers to sanction China, but the panel hopes that the evidence will help governments assess their relations with Beijing. Beijing says the tribunal was set up by anti-China forces to spread lies. The tribunal has continued to invite the Chinese embassy to give any evidence, but they haven't come forward. This is the first set of hearings of the Uyghur Tribunal. The second set is coming in September, and the final ruling is set to be made by the end of the year. Jane Werrell, NTD News, London.
Hundreds of Brits have cut their holidays short in a last-ditch attempt to avoid new quarantine rules. Holidaymakers in Portugal will have to quarantine for 10 days upon return due to new rules scheduled to come into force tomorrow.
Many British tourists holidaying in the Algarve are returning home earlier than planned to avoid having to quarantine on return.
The fact that we've waited so long to come on holiday and then we've had to finish it 3 days early to get back because we can't quarantine for 10 days. And all the extra costs involved in doing it because we've had to pay for new flights.
The government said last week that Portugal will be removed from the green list for quarantine-free travel because CCP virus cases were rising and new variants were being detected. From Tuesday morning, UK residents returning from Portugal will need to quarantine for 10 days and take 2 COVID-19 tests. Many tourists have had to cut their holidays short and book alternative flights home at significant extra costs.
Early flight, we were meant to fly home on Wednesday and now we're flying home today. An extra £400 in cost as well, but we can't isolate, we don't have time on our holidays, so.
New CCP virus cases have increased slightly in Portugal in recent weeks, but are not significantly higher than UK infection rates. The Portuguese government has criticised Britain's decision, saying it's not justified and will cause serious economic damage to both countries.
The Home Secretary has written to social media companies asking them to remove posts that glamorise migrants crossing the English Channel. This is after 600 migrants were intercepted crossing the Channel in 3 days last week. For the first
Home Secretary Priti Patel has written to social media companies urging them to remove posts showing migrants crossing the English Channel. She says the posts glamorise the illegal crossings. The Home Secretary's letter follows a viral video posted on TikTok, which the Home Office said appeared to show a group of men crossing the Channel in a dinghy. The Home Office added, similar posts have appeared on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. They are used by people smugglers to promote crossings to desperate migrants. Patel has repeatedly vowed to make the dangerous route across the English Channel unviable. But crossings have surged and almost 600 migrants were intercepted attempting to cross the Channel in 3 days last week. A spokesman for Facebook says they will continue to work closely with law enforcement agencies to identify, remove and report this illegal activity.
For the first time, the group of 7 wealthy democracies agreed to support a global minimum corporate tax of at least 15%. It's to deter multinational companies from avoiding taxes by stashing profits in low-rate countries.
Finance ministers from the G7 leading industrialised nations on the weekend signed a landmark global agreement to confront tax avoidance.
Well, I'm delighted to announce that today, after years of discussion, G7 finance ministers have reached a historic agreement to reform the global tax system, to make it fit for the global digital age, but crucially to make sure that it's fair.
The ministers backed a minimum global corporate tax of 15%. It's aimed at ending tax evasion by multinational businesses such as Google, Apple and Amazon, and it could raise hundreds of billions of pounds. The deal also promises to end national digital services taxes levied by Britain and other European countries, which the US says unfairly target American tech giants.
By collaborating with one another on the global minimum tax, governments protect their national sovereignty to set tax policy, because the pressures that have forced the race to the bottom on corporate tax rates are alleviated.
Rich nations have struggled for years to agree on a way to raise more revenue from large multinationals, which often shift profits to countries where they pay little or no tax. The measures will first need to find broader agreement at a meeting of the G20 next month in Venice, which includes a number of emerging economies. The UK was hosting the meeting because it holds the group's rotating presidency, and it came ahead of an annual summit of G7 leaders scheduled to begin this Friday in Cornwall.
More than 100 veterans gathered to watch the opening of a memorial for those who took part in the D-Day landings 77 years ago.
Normandy veterans and relatives across the UK gathered on Sunday to watch the unveiling of a memorial dedicated to those involved in the D-Day landings. British Ambassador to France, Lord Edward Llewellyn, declared the memorial open, cutting a ribbon and laying wreaths along with French Defence Minister Florence Parly.
These are the men who enabled liberty to regain her foothold on the European continent on the 6th of June 1944, and who, in the days and weeks that followed, lifted the shackles of tyranny, hedgerow by Normandy hedgerow, mile by bloody mile.
La France n'oublie pas.
France does not forget. France is forever grateful.
The memorial was just outside a Normandy village in France. Due to COVID-19 restrictions, many veterans from abroad were unable to attend in person. Instead, a live stream of the unveiling was shown at the National Memorial Arboretum in Staffordshire, and more than 100 veterans gathered to watch it. D-Day veteran Bernard Morgan, who was the youngest sergeant in the British Royal Air Force to take part in the landings, attended the ceremony in Staffordshire and recalled his experience.
The thing I remember most was the sad sight of seeing so many dead bodies on the beach. They were mostly soldiers who landed early in the morning.
The landings were a pivotal moment in the Second World War and helped turn the tide in the global conflict. On D-Day 77 years ago, more than 150,000 Allied troops landed on the beaches, carried by 7,000 boats.
And I got very friendly with these wireless operators, and sadly 3 of them lost their lives in Normandy. And I think about them every time I put these up, and especially today.
The names of more than 22,000 men and women are written on the stone columns of the new memorial. Most of them were British soldiers who lost their lives between the D-Day landings and the liberation of Paris. The memorial cost almost £30 million and was funded by the UK government and private benefactors.
4 cooling towers at a former power station in Staffordshire have been demolished in a controlled explosion. The 117-metre tall concrete towers were destroyed with explosives on Sunday morning. The towers have dominated Rugeley's skyline for decades, and hundreds of people gathered to watch them come down. The power station's former operator is planning to redevelop the site for housing and employment space. Outline planning permission was granted in April this year for 2,300 new low-carbon homes and a school. Still to come. In the US, Republican lawmakers are demanding top White House medical advisor Dr. Fauci testifies before Congress about his connection to researchers in Wuhan. That and more when we return.